Hi, friends. Welcome back to this podcast called Asking for a Friend. We're hoping to have a conversation today, and we're hoping that you're having conversations, and somehow maybe that this conversation would put you at greater ease in having your conversations. So we just love to push ideas back and forth at each other. We think that God has designed us in a way that we're better together. And so at least Lanita's been taking questions about the Bible. What's the Bible all about? How do I read it? What should I read? Should I know something in advance of this? And so...
one of those questions is, do I have to believe in the Bible if I'm thinking about being a Christian? Is that something I have to believe in? And why should I? Why should I trust it?
Yeah, I think we live in a country that was built on Judeo-Christian ethics. And so folks would say, well, I'm a Christian. If I'm something, I'm a Christian. And what does exactly being a Christian mean? There's a outspoken atheist, Richard Dawkins, professor, I believe, at Oxford, who is very, very clear about his disinterest in ever acknowledging the existence of God. No room to maneuver there, but who just in the last couple of years has come out and said that he's a cultural Christian, which was sent shockwaves. He explained it. He likes the sound of organ music in a majestic cathedral setting. He loves the sound of Christmas carols through the month of December. So culturally, he likes that. And he would probably say, as opposed to some of the other options for world religions, Christianity has some minor benefits. Richard Dawkins would say that. But I don't know if cultural Christianity actually isn't some sort of oxymoron, if those two things can't and don't belong together. Jesus talked about what it meant to be a Christian and follow him in the Sermon on the Mount, and explained a whole bunch of really cool stuff. It's worth reading. Sermon on the Mount, it's in one of the biographies of Jesus, Matthew, from chapter 5, 6, and 7. If you wanted to start reading your Bible, you could start there. He finishes with this kind of like a last shot where he says, hey, the person who hears my words but doesn't put them into practice is like a person who builds a house on the sand. The rains come, the storm, waters rise, and that house is destroyed. The house is often used as a biblical picture of a person's life. But the person who hears my words and puts them into practice is like a person who builds his house on the rock. Rain still come, water still rise, but that house stands. And so it's pretty clear that when Jesus is talking about a Christian, it's someone who's putting into practice the things that he's taught. Maybe the person is saying, do I have to believe all of the Bible to be a Christian? Is it all like, there's kosher laws in there, they'll steer you away from lobster, take your pork chop away. Do I have to do all of that? And there's sacrificial laws too. And so I would say no, and you're going to have to read the whole thing at some point, because Jesus came to say, I've come to fulfill all of that, and not I've come to wipe that all clean. We don't have to worry about the Old Testament anymore. If you read the Old Testament, it really points to Jesus. And so for sure, we're going to talk later about where you might start in reading your Bible, but we would say none of it can be thrown away, even the really hard parts. And there's some difficult, gross parts. Last point I would say is, do I have to trust it? Can I trust it? And I think it's important for everybody to realize that they are trusting something, someone. I talk to some young adults, and they're really into a podcast. They really love this one podcast person. And then a couple months later, I'll ask, and they've changed. It's a new person, new influencer, which is fair and fine. I'm the same way. I sort of hit these things in spurts and starts. But everyone's trusting in something, someone. And so I find myself, and I think this is the way it works for Christians, is I'm going to trust Jesus. Yeah. When I look at Jesus, he seems to have trusted the Bible a lot, enough to memorize it. And so I'm going to take my cues from him. Are there troubling bits in the Bible? Are there pieces that don't make as much sense to our rationalistic, scientific approach to life? For sure. But I think all of them are worth sort of peeling the layers back on, going a little deeper on it. Okay, so this is a really practical question, and I'm going to just throw it at you. There are, in Christian circles, different translations of the Bible, and they all go back to whatever text. But can you help us navigate the world of how do I pick a translation that works for me?
Right. I get asked this question a lot, and I think that people are wanting to have a good translation, and sometimes there's a question about like which is the best one. I think it's helpful for us to realize that anytime we're reading the Bible in English, like it is a translation. We can't read it in the original language. And actually, the New Testament, when the writers wrote about Jesus, they were already translating what he said from Hebrew into Greek. So we don't have the original words of Jesus even in the Bible, and that's okay. It was more important for us to communicate what Jesus was saying in a language that people would understand. That's the whole idea behind a translation. And it's really common with a lot of books. So my husband loves literature, and he loves reading the Odyssey, which was another ancient Greek text. There are about 60 translations of that. So it's really common to have all these different translations. And it's because there's a different focus for different ways of translating. Some people want to translate word for word, as close to word for word as possible from one language to another, so they're really getting the original thing, words that were used. And that can be helpful, and we have some Bible translations that do that. The English Standard Version would be an example of that. And then other places or other translators, they want to go for how do we capture the idea in the original language and translate that into a language that we would understand the idea in English. And so that would be kind of a thought for thought way of translating. And I would say the New Living Translation would be a really good example of that. And then a lot of translators try to go the middle ground. So we have all these different translations. There are also some ways of translating the Bible that are called a paraphrase. And that's usually done by a single author who really wants to bring to life even the poetry, the creativity of the original text. And so they don't try to go word for word. In terms of choosing the best one, I think the best one is the one that you'll read. And so that depends a lot on who you are and what type of book you like to read. If you were starting to read the Bible for the first time, then I would say go for one of these ones that expresses thought for thought. So probably like a New Living Translation. Or here at St. Paul's on our Sunday mornings, we use the New International Version. It would get us closer to that thought for thought. It's going to help us understand the ideas. And then if you're wanting to study the Bible more, then maybe you go for more of a word-for-word translation. One of the things that can be fun or interesting, if you like to study and really get into, say, a story and try to understand what it means, is to compare a couple of translations. I think that's a really helpful way to get a different perspective on things. So I think the main thing is we don't need to get hung up on there's just one perfect translation that we're looking for, and there's one best one. It is more find the one that is going to help you be closer to Jesus.
So can I ask you, what are you drawn to?
My favorite translation is probably the New Revised Standard Version. I like it for a couple of reasons. One is that the scholars behind it really wanted to do as much as they could to capture some of the poetry in some parts of it, so they paid attention to the language there. That's tough to do in a translation. And also, as a woman, that's a translation that has gone the distance of taking uses of the word like man to represent humankind, and they'll actually say, well, this is humans. And so they will use words like brothers and sisters instead of just brothers, or humans instead of man, and that just makes it easier. There's one less barrier for me. Mm-hmm. So I really like that version. That's my go-to. How about you?
Yeah, well, anthropos, right, would be the word for man, which was always intended to be
absolutely
male and female, but maybe we lost our way. I was thinking about that because we've done a little bit of prep. When I was 12, I remember wanting to read the Bible. We would have used the RSV in my church growing up. That probably would have put me out, knocked me out. So I went and found a Living Translation. I'm so old that it was the Living Translation, not the New Living Translation.
There are a lot of new
yeah, it was just paraphrase. And it was good. It worked for me at 12. Yeah. And I think I read that through. I can still see it was a green-covered Living Translation and worked through that. Got the gist of it captured by the stories, slogged my way through a couple of the books, and then found my eyes widening with some of these stories that I was reading. So, we're not ready for this one. If somebody was going to pick up the Bible, because we think that's the way that God sometimes best communicates to us, what can they expect? Because it sounds like holy text. It sounds like something's a little bit unreachable. Sorry, Brad, like Shakespeare. It's going to be an older language. It's going to be, super special, holy people. But give us a quick. What's this going to be about?
Yeah, well, I'd like to hear what you would say about it. But this is the story of God. And I think that's what we need to remember when we're reading the Bible. So this is all about how God loves people and is going after people who are really, really bad. And so the people in the Bible, there are just really no great people who come up. Maybe Ruth comes out looking okay, but they're just they're all kind of dodgy characters. We can't look at them as heroes at all. Jesus is the hero, and in fact, the kind of the sin and messiness of humans just makes him makes us realize how beautiful and good he is. So, don't expect hero stories. How about you?
And they're good. Like there's some good pieces, right?
Yeah, you're right.
There's these both. They're kind of like me. They're kind of like you.
They're humans, yeah.
Right, and so there's okay, and then you're like, right. I thought we had something going here.
That's right, but we can't be heroes. Like humans are not to be idolized.
I love your thing. It's actually the story of God, and we will always forever make it about ourselves.
Yeah.
And so you would say this. I think yours is a better response, but one of my favorite stories in all of the Bible is a story that happens on Easter Sunday. And Jesus is resurrected. And two folks, I think it's actually a husband and wife, Cleopas and his friend. Yeah. They're walking from Jerusalem where all of this tragedy has happened. And they're walking to their home in Emmaus. And a stranger comes along and they welcome them into it's Jesus. And it says in the scriptures that Jesus showed them from the very beginning of the scriptures how all of them pointed towards him. Yeah. So I love that. Like it is the story of God, who we know in Jesus, and all of these stories aren't just like hints about it, but there are some real direct prophecies and indications like this is the God story. I was telling, this may not work, but I was telling Lenita a day or two ago, I was grandpa sitting, and these two little girls, and they're climbing this. It was pretty precarious. It was a straight climb, and it was up about 8 feet, might even been 9, like I couldn't reach it. And these two little pink snow outfits climbing up these lattice ladder, and halfway up, 3/4 of the way up, one of them just fell. Boom! And I caught her, which was my job, and I caught her before she hit the ground. Said, "You're doing great." Put her back on, and up she went again. And then just as I got her, the other one fell. It's like, what is going on here? Caught her, and I remember being 3. The world is about you.
Yeah.
And it's I'm going to get to the top of this thing. It felt like God was saying, like, this is the story of the Bible. These little people making their way. Look what they're doing. But all the time, God is just rescuing and has had this heart to set things right. At any rate, that's my answer to, there's lots of chaos in the Bible, which you don't actually think is going to come. You think it's going to get better. And then there's some scenes in that you couldn't actually make a movie out of. It would be so horrific. So it's like, whoa, okay, let's do this.
So if someone were going to be reading the Bible for the first time, no exposure to it before, how would they go about doing that? Where would they start?
So I would start in the Gospel of Mark, which is one of the biographies. It's the shortest one, but I'm going to introduce something. You may actually disagree with me on this, but I would say find someone to read with. Ask someone to do this, because for the most part of human history, the scriptures have always been understood better together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read the Gospel of Mark. I do this with people regularly. We're going to go one chapter at a time. We can actually text back and forth. What did you think of this? What did you think of that? We've actually done that here with some of our summer students. Let's just unpack the story of Jesus and let's do it together. This isn't a test. We believe that the Holy Spirit works through individuals, but oftentimes through us together. So I would say, let's get into the story of Jesus. And then, I don't know, I go to Philippians, which is Paul's happiest letter. And so let's do Philippians, not that any of the other ones you can skip them, but Philippians. And then I might punch back into the early scriptures to one of these little 4-chapter stories like Ruth or Jonah, which are really kind of, I don't know, they're sort of unsettling, settling stories about the way God works. And so I would be a big fan of journey together. How about you? What would you say in terms of navigating that? And maybe you have some thoughts about how to help a family or kids tackle something like that.
Yeah, I think that with kids especially, it's great to start with Jesus. Jesus helps make everything else make sense. And some of the Old Testament stories, we have to, dumb them down so much to make them kid-friendly. Like, the story of Noah and the flood, that's actually a pretty traumatic story, but we have cute animals all over the place when we tell this with kids. So start with Jesus, and I would just hang out with Jesus until kids are of an age when they can start to handle some of those tougher stories. I think one of the resources that has been really helpful for me and my family has been the Bible Project. They take these books at a time and they explain each book in such a helpful way and an easy way to understand, and I get the whole idea of it, and it helps me when I go to read it. So I would rely on resources like that too.
Yeah, keeping it real. I think for me with kids is that I want to say to them, so God is going to speak to you through this. And so try to pay attention to that piece. There's going to be stories, and they'll be really interesting to you. But at some point, you're going to feel something shifting in here too, right? So the Bible, awesome a gift that it is, it's a window through which we can see Jesus. It's also, whatever I should be looking for, something that is a tool that allows us to hear what God's trying to say to us. So pay attention to that piece. You're reading someone else's prayer, someone else's poem. So, Jesus gives a parable, but he's always been intending not just to talk back then, but to talk to you. Okay, what about if a person has read a little bit of the Bible? Is that enough? Do I have to read it regularly? What's the point of that? If I've read it through completely, should I move on to another book? What's your perspective on it?
So I think the Bible is different. It's not like a textbook in that, a textbook you can read it once, you've absorbed the information, you're good to go. For people who are following Jesus, though, the Bible is spoken of, it's described as having kind of an aliveness to it because God has breathed it. He's inspired the people and has who wrote it and has been part of this book coming to be in the state that it's in. And so there's an aliveness to it, and it is important for us in our faith. As we read the Bible, we encounter God in a unique way, and that will recalibrate us. It helps us grow in our faith. It centers us. It corrects us. There's so many beautiful things, and I think that only comes through kind of regular reading and rereading of the Bible and asking God to speak to us through it, to open our eyes to what it has to say, help us to hear, like you were talking about with kids, and He will start it will start to mean more to us all the time. So I think, it's just a constant part of life. What would you say?
I was somewhere else there while you're talking.
Okay, talking about the Bible?
No, I was with you. But so for me, it was like, I wanted to ask you this question, if you and Brad ever had a time when you were apart. Because I'm way older than you are, but in my lifetime, we used to send letters back and forth. We didn't send emails. And so these things came hard copy. And Colleen and I were 3 hours apart and we saw each other most weekends. But we wrote these letters, and they would get stuffed into places, or I would reread them. And it was all this anticipation of seeing her again. And so there's this, for me, the Bible is a bit like that. It's like, well, I read it once. I don't need to read that letter from her again. I'll be going like, I wonder what she meant. when she said that. I'll go through the lines again. For me, just this morning, I'm reading about Paul in I think it was Acts 17, where he's in the Areopagus. He's in Athens, and he's debating with these guys. And in Acts 13, Paul was unbelievably brilliant with the Jewish people. I'd never seen this sermon before. And he's explaining exactly how Jesus is the Messiah. And then he goes to the Areopagus, and he's starting to try to talk about the Christian hope with people who have no context for it whatsoever. And I'm drawn into this again this morning. I'm reading this, like, look at him working on this. And then, God, what's the context that I'm in? And what do I need to A, hear? B, how can I speak to people like the fire department? So, I have fire department friends or other folks that are in my life. I think, okay, anyway, so for me, it would be like saying, well, I filled my car up once with fuel. Will I have to do that again?
Eat again. Yeah.
I'm done. I did that. Can we go on to the next? So for me, reading the scriptures, it's like that. Yeah, cool. Okay, listen, this is, maybe this is a one-off thing.
Sure.
We're moving towards Easter. And this might actually drop even before Easter. So Easter seems to be two parts. Good Friday, Easter Sunday. Churches often have services on Good Friday, Easter. Like, if I'm at zero with Christian faith, what's good about Friday? And just give me some background, some help with that.
Yeah, Good Friday. So that's the day that we remember Jesus' death on the cross. He was crucified on a Friday. And the day that he was crucified is the darkest day in human history. And in fact, it was so dark that the witnesses talk about actual darkness descending that day. And yet, it's also the brightest example or picture or expression of God's love for us. So there's this darkness, and then there's this brilliant picture of Jesus who sacrificed himself for us. So I find Good Friday it's not like joyful celebration or maybe exuberant celebration, but there is a deep hope and a beauty and a recognition of just how loved we are and how loved I am, that Jesus would willingly step into all of the mess of human history and all of the evil that actually put him on the cross, and he would die so that we could be in relationship with him, in relationship with one another. I think Good Friday, brings into focus the beauty of Jesus on the cross and what that means. So here, when we have Good Friday service, it's maybe a little bit more solemn. I don't think it's gloomy or depressing, but it gives us space to reflect on this. There's always the hope of Sunday coming, but there's that kind of space there. I heard one speaker say that we kind of need Good Friday to help us prepare for Easter Sunday. It helps us be ready for it. So on Easter Sunday, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So, like, I love you. Those are powerful words. I love you. And I don't know anybody who doesn't like to hear that. Most of us, though, at some point, including, like, love isn't just a, wow, you make me feel amazing. I love you means I'm ready to do whatever it takes. And so the night of, Jesus, night before, the Good Friday piece, right? He's washing feet, going to a cross, all those sorts of things. And so one of the things that the New Testament writers could never get over was the fact that God is love.
Yeah.
God is love. And they weren't just like, it's just a loving feeling that's out there. It's like, no, we remember the days where he played that out. So super powerful Good Friday, super powerful Easter Sunday morning, where Jesus is raised from the dead, which is an answer to an ancient hope that the Jewish people had, that this life wasn't the end of it, that God one day was going to make everything right. All of the mess and the goop of Judges and all some of these other stories, that all of this, including the exile from the Garden of Eden at the very, very beginning of the Bible, all of this was going to be made right. And God seems to have prompted writers, prophets, to talk about a day when human bodies that are broken and breaking down would also be made right forever. Yeah. So the making right of bodies, the making right of minds that have lost their way, memories that are failing, all those sorts of things, and a planet that has taken some serious body blows. All of this was going to be made right. And so Easter Sunday is the reminder, it's a celebration. There's this new song of "The King is in the room." This is going to be the way that God's going to make it right. And we get to live now like what is coming is here now. Mm-hmm. We don't have to live with all the, the oppression and heaviness and darkness. We can actually live with honesty, with tears at times, with this unsinkable hope that Christ is risen, and that changes everything. So, here we're just going for it all day from sunrise, which is why a Christian tradition, like get together at sunrise and remind each other and carry that through right to the end. What we don't do here, which we need to get going, is Easter morning, Easter Monday morning. Apparently the Greek Orthodox monks will get together on Easter Monday and they'll just tell jokes.
I like this idea.
Yes, just tell jokes because the last laugh is on the devil. Mm-hmm. They just
That's great.
Save up all their cheesiest dad jokes to give each other.
Sounds good.
Easter Monday morning. Okay, thanks for tuning in with us, friends. We bless you. We encourage you to be in your own conversations with those who live on the same streets, work the same jobs, maybe drive in the same carpool, share the same elevator, having conversations with folks about the God that loves them the most. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.